here in the studio. Just to explain what's going on here, Clive.
Yeah, well, just as people thought that the phone hacking scandal was sort of really dying down, you'll remember that before Christmas we heard from the Crown Prosecution Service that the publishers of the News of the World were not going to be prosecuted as a corporate body. We also heard that there would be no proceedings against journalists, a group of journalists at the Mirror Group. This relates to civil proceedings, in other words, individuals suing newsgroup newspapers, the publishers both of the now defunct News of the World and of The Sun. And there are two potential new fronts here. The ruling this morning relates to the features department at the News of the World. The vast majority of hacking claims related to activities by the news group, the news team at the News of the World. What has been ruled this morning by Mr. Justice Mann is that those claims which had been subject to a very narrow time limit, they were subject to a time limit between January 2005 and August 2006, when a man called Dan Evans, a reporter who was convicted for phone hacking, had admitted hacking at the features department of the News of the World. What's been ruled today is that those claims can expand beyond that narrow time frame. So that means that existing claims can go broader and that perhaps as many as 60 new claims could be brought. That's in relation to the News of the World. But the same judge is also looking at separate litigation relating to claims of phone hacking at The Sun. Now, the publishers of The Sun newsgroup newspapers have always denied that there was any phone hacking at The Sun. But we're going to hear in some 3 weeks or so from the same judge as to whether claims against for phone hacking relating to activities at The Sun can go ahead. Currently, there are a number of individuals, one of whom, by the way, is the former chief executive of the British Olympic Association, Simon Clegg, who claimed that stories that appeared in The Sun were there as a result of phone hacking. He claims that up to 11 stories that appeared in the News of the World and The Sun were as a result of his phone having been hacked. So we will hear whether those claims are going to be opened up. Currently 5 claimants, that could grow to 16. So that again could be another front. As I say, newsgroup newspapers have always denied that there was any phone hacking at The Sun.
Clive, thank you very much. Clive Coleman there, our legal correspondent.
A petition demanding that the US presidential candidate Donald Trump be banned from the UK will be debated in the Commons this afternoon. More than 500,000 people have signed the petition after the Republican called for Muslims to be temporarily stopped from entering the United States as an anti-terror measure. Well, here he is making those comments at a rally in New Hampshire.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We have no choice. We have no choice.
Well, our correspondent Rob Watson is at Westminster. We'll be speaking to him in a moment, but first let's go to a Donald Trump campaign event in Lynchburg, West Virginia, and our correspondent there, Barbara Plett-Usher. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And Barbara, Donald Trump seems to revel in controversy. What does he make of the fact that you've got this huge petition with people wanting him to stop him coming to the UK and a debate going on at Parliament?
Well, he himself has responded to the petition by saying that Britain should be thanking him for his position because it's only trying to cover up its own problem with Muslims, and he's actually threatened to withdraw some of his investment, hundreds of billions of pounds of investment in Scotland as a result. I've been speaking to people here about the debate and about the possibility of Britain banning him from the country. Now, this is not the usual kind of venue that Mr. Trump usually speaks to. It's a Christian university. It's quite a lot of young students who are required to be at an event such as this. There are a core of Trump supporters here, but it's much more diverse than the usual crowd. So a number of Christian students have said to me they didn't agree with the ban on Muslims that he called for. They thought it might even qualify as hate speech. They accepted, of course, Britain's right to debate it. They invoked the religious liberty a lot, though. They said Mr. Trump had a right to say what he had to say. The British people had a right to debate it. But to ban him from the country would probably be a step too far. And one of his supporters said to me that it would be ridiculous. He said, what does Britain want to do? Lose all of the investments that he's put into the country. So there's a diverse opinion here, but as I said, it's not the usual kind of crowd that Mr. Trump speaks to.
What about the effect on his campaign? Is it possible to gauge how those comments about banning Muslims have affected his prospects?
They certainly haven't. They certainly haven't made his prospect worse in terms of the primary votes. The primary votes that would elect whoever is going to be the Republican candidate for president. He has a very strong, intense base of support among Republicans, a certain Republican crowd, generally lower middle class, often white, quite often male, who support him no matter what. And these kinds of statements have intended to increase support in that base. So it hasn't affected his ability, it looks like, to be possibly chosen to be the candidate that would represent the Republicans. However, when you look at the larger electorate, he has the highest votes against him of any candidate, the highest dislike of any candidates, up to 60%. And I think these kinds of statements contribute to that. So the Republican establishment is quite concerned that he might be able to be elected as the candidate, but then he might not be able to be elected as the president. And they have come out, all of them, against the statement that he made about banning Muslims.
Okay, Barbara, many thanks for the latest from the Trump campaign. And let's go over to Westminster now and talk to Rob Watson. This debate getting underway a little bit later on this afternoon. It really does seem to have sparked quite a big controversy on a whole series of different levels, these comments from Donald Trump.
It does, and of course not just in Britain but across Europe, but yes, specifically in Britain, because not only did Donald Trump say that Muslims should be banned from the United States until, as he put it, America's leaders had figured out what was up with Islam, but he also said, if you remember, that there were parts of Britain that were so radicalized the police were frightened to go there. So yes, hardly surprising that nearly 600,000 people have signed this petition now demanding that Donald Trump be banned from coming in. It has to be said, of course, that there are lots of people who are prepared to stand up for his right to come here. And of course, worth pointing out another thing that really grabbed my attention, Carol, and that is that the second most popular e-petition, one asking that there should be a ban on all immigration to Britain until a so-called Islamic State has been defeated.
And just briefly, Rob, that debate, of course, will be fascinating, probably pretty lively. It's not going to determine whether or not Donald Trump can come to the UK, is it?
In brief, absolutely not. There won't be a vote. They're not going to change any laws. It's only the Home Office, it's only the actual government that could ban people from coming here, and absolutely no sign of them doing that for two reasons. One, they can't see that he's actually violated any British laws, and secondly, they must be thinking, crikey, there maybe is just an outside chance that he could be US president.
OK, Rob Watson, for now, thanks very much.
Right, we're going to pause, check out the weather prospects. It's just gone 3:30. Here's Louise Lear. Hi, Louise.
Hi there. Well, it's certainly been pretty seasonal, the weather in the last few days, hasn't it? Cold with some snow. The chilly feel is set to continue for most of this week, but there'll be a good deal of dry weather to go with it. But hopefully, if you don't like the cold, something a little bit milder into the weekend. But unfortunately, that also could bring more persistent rain. This has been the story so far today. We've seen some persistent rain down into the southwest, weakening off considerably, and some rain into Scotland. But through the night tonight, with those clearer skies, we're likely to see a hard frost developing in the southeast, lows down to -6. That could be the coldest night of the winter season so far for the southeast corner. We're also going to see a very cold night, Chelsea Glens of Scotland, here down to lows of -9, -10. Now, elsewhere, we could have some icy stretches with 1 or 2 lingering showers first thing in the morning. That's certainly worth bearing in mind if you're up and off early enough. And there will be a quiet start to Tuesday, a good deal of dry weather in the offing, the cloud thick enough to the north for the odd spot or two of rain, but the best of the sunshine into central and southern parts of England and Wales. But again, still cold, 3 or 4 degrees, a tad milder out to the west.
Hello, this is BBC News with Carol Walker and Ben Brown.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 33 minutes past 3. Our latest BBC News headlines. Tata Steel is cutting more than 1,000 jobs at plants across England and Wales, most of them at Talbot in South Wales, where 750 jobs are being lost. David Cameron says the government will do everything it can to help the steel industry.
Work very closely with the company and with the local communities to do everything we can to get people the training and the assistance they need. And we'll continue to do everything we can to help the steel industry.
The tennis authorities say they have a zero-tolerance approach to corruption following a BBC and BuzzFeed news investigation into suspected match fixing.
David Cameron says thousands of Muslim women who can't speak English has been given lessons as part of a £20 million scheme to tackle segregation and radicalisation.
Moroccan authorities have arrested a Belgian national of Moroccan origin, directly linked to the attackers who carried out the November Paris attacks. The arrest was made near Casablanca.
And there's been a breakthrough in the treatment for multiple sclerosis. Doctors testing a new way of treating the autoimmune disease say they've seen remarkable improvements in some patients.
And we'll be live in the House of Commons very shortly, where there's due to be a statement from the government. The Business Minister, Anna Soubry, due to give an update on the situation regarding steel jobs. We know that Tata has confirmed more than 1,000 job losses. Our correspondent Vicky Young is at Westminster for us. And Vicky, the government insisting that it's doing all it can, but under quite a bit of pressure.
Yeah, it is, and I think this goes to a fundamental question that's being put to them about having an industrial strategy, if you like. How far do ministers and the government intervene to prop up an industry if it's ailing? And they've been asked a lot of questions saying that they should have done more. The opposition and Labour have accused them of sitting on their hands, simply not doing